let me ask you something. How do you think? I mean, what's really going on inside your head when you're trying to remember something or figure out a tough problem? Well, it turns out our inner worlds can be incredibly different from person to person. And that difference might just have a surprising link to the jobs we end up doing.
Okay, let's try a little experiment right now. Go on, close your eyes for me. Can you picture a bright red apple? Like really see it? Can you see its shiny skin? Maybe a little green leaf on top or the brown stem? Can you kind of turn it around in your mind? For most people, yeah, this is pretty easy.
But what if you did that and you saw, well, nothing, just black, a total blank, no picture, no color, no shape at all? It's not that you don't know what an apple is, of course you do, you just can't see it in your head. Well, there's actually a name for this, aphantasia. It's the inability to voluntarily create mental images in your mind's eye. Now, it's super important to know this isn't a disorder or something that's wrong. It's just a totally different and pretty fascinating way that some people's brains are wired.
So for a long time, aphantasia is just this really interesting quirk of the mind. But now, some new research has uncovered this really unexpected connection between having a blind mind's eye and the kind of work people do, especially in science and tech.
A pretty big survey, we're talking over 2,000 people, decided to dig into this. They basically compared the jobs of people who have aphantasia with the jobs of the general population, just to see if any interesting patterns popped up.
And the results? Whoa, they were seriously striking. The survey found that people with aphantasia are way more likely to work in STEM fields. You know, science, tech, engineering, and math. Which at first sounds completely backward, right? So that's the big mystery we're looking at. What on earth is going on? You'd think being able to visualize complex machines or architectural blueprints would be a huge plus in these fields. So why would not having mental pictures be linked to a career in them?
All right, so to solve this puzzle, researchers came up with a pretty cool idea that really gets to the heart of how our brains process information. And it all comes down to different ways of thinking.
You can kind of break it down into two main styles. On one hand, you've got visual thinking. That relies on those sharp mental pictures we talked about. But then there's abstract thinking. This is a non-visual way of processing things that runs on concepts, patterns, and systems of rules. Instead of seeing an apple, an abstract thinker just knows the facts about it, its color, its shape, its position, without ever forming an image.
And this is where that STEM connection just clicks into place. I mean, think about it. Writing code, that's all about pure logic and rules. Advanced math is full of concepts that are literally impossible to picture. And even in fields like physics and engineering, you're relying on these really abstract equations to make sense of the world.
And that brings us to the core theory. The idea is, if your brain doesn't automatically jump to creating pictures, it might get really good at thinking in other ways. It could become much more tuned in to spotting patterns, understanding systems, and thinking in pure concepts, which are, the absolute bedrock skills for STEM.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, this discovery is way more than just a cool piece of trivia. It actually has some pretty big implications for how we think about the human brain and why having different kinds of minds is so important.
This really forces us to look at aphantasia in a whole new light. It's not a flaw. It's not a lack of anything. It's just a different cognitive operating system. And in a world that tends to celebrate visual creativity, this shows us that a non-visual mind can have its own powerful hidden strengths. Our brains are just incredible at adapting, building strengths that are perfect for tackling certain kinds of problems.
So let's just trace that journey real quick. We started with a really interesting survey finding. That led us to a hypothesis about visual versus abstract thinking. And all of that brought us to this amazing new way of looking at cognitive diversity and our own hidden talents. And that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. If something like aphantasia can actually be an advantage in some of the world's most demanding fields, it just makes you wonder, what other differences in how we think, things we might not even notice or maybe even see as weaknesses, are actually superpowers in disguise, just waiting for the right moment to shine?